All right. Hey, what's up, guys? Coach Mack, Play Fast Football, Wednesday night. Glad some of you guys could join me on here. We are 4 days or 5 days now away from the start of the 2024 season. So we kick off our season stuff, our camp stuff on Monday, July 29th. So that's this Monday coming up. So you've got NFL teams back in action right now, back in training camps. Got all the college media days and some college programs opening up. So it is that time of year again. We are about to go full time into the football grind, right? So it's always that, especially if you teach, it's always that tough time of year. It's football season, but you also know that you got to go back to school so that summer's over. So, it becomes kind of that emotional roller coaster of you can't wait to get the season started. You want to get everything going again, but at the same time, when the season starts, you got to go back to school again and back to work every day. So I'm excited, excited to get, obviously with some of the changes that we're making on defense, excited to get some film on some of that stuff and, get some YouTube stuff going and then get some Patreon stuff going. Once we start getting some film footage of that stuff. And then once we start playing games, getting some game footage of the things that we are trying to do, what we're trying to get accomplished, why we're doing the things that we're doing, why we chose, I think I mentioned it already either last week or the week before. And it's interesting to me now, I'm seeing all these things on social media now with guys studying the 3 high system and, people kind of read into it a little bit more than there really is. I don't think it's as difficult as people make it out to be. I think it's way more simplistic than people make it out to be. And I think you kind of read into it a little bit, more than that's there. But, we've decided to get away from the 3 high stuff and kind of replace the middle safety with a weak side outside backer, making us more of a 3-4 team. And, the change for us was relatively simple. We didn't change coverages. We didn't change coverage structures. And our box in our tight front, even though we were a 3-3 personnel team, our box always played out as a 3-2 box anyway. So our run fits really didn't change. Our techniques up front, nothing really changed. So, it's a change for us. Obviously, it's different than what we had been doing, but it's not a wholesale change from the standpoint of completely different fronts and fits and structures and coverage structures. So, I'm excited to see what it looks like. Excited to see if, from a game plan standpoint, if it, accomplishes the things that we set out to accomplish. If we can defend some of the formations we were seeing versus our 3 high stuff, if we can, be a little bit stronger against some of those formations and, see if the guys that we moved around to try and make plays are, excited to see those guys actually get a chance to make some plays now, in game. So it's always, to me, it's always a little bit refreshing when you're doing something different. Sometimes, although I love the stuff we were doing the last 2 or 3 years, sometimes it gets a little bit stagnant at times, but, having something new going into a season is always, a little bit intriguing, at least to me. And again, I say new, but it's really not, it's not all that new for us. We didn't, we didn't really change things dramatically all that much. So, it's when you get, to me, I always look forward to that time of year. The summer kind of drags on sometimes. You like being off work. You like not having the stress of being in the classroom and teaching duties. But, at the same time, it kind of, the workout, sometimes it kind of drags on. And then you kind of, to me, you tinker with too many different things. Now, when you get the practices and you start getting results and run fits and, guys actually have to tackle now. So, to me, it's always, it's always exciting to get that year started. I know everybody else is probably getting ready to kick off whatever part of the country you are in right now. So, exciting time of year for everybody, especially in the football world when you got all the NFL stuff that's kicking off right now. So now you start to, you're going to start to get a chance to see what's new, what's different, what the craze is. Every year there's always, something new that kind of takes over. I think for us as high school coaches, we wait for the college season a little bit more to see what the college guys are doing, right? And to see what the college guys are doing is a little bit different on offense or defense, or what the trends are, now starting to happen on offense or defense, and see if the game is changing any. I think offensively, you're going to see an uptick in 12 personnel, more tight end usage. I think guys are going to try and take advantage of the fact that most defenses are playing nickel safety systems now, and getting, more speed on the field, more coverage guys on the field. And I think offenses are probably going to try and take advantage of that by putting bigger bodies on the field and seeing if those nickel teams can, can hold up. So I like our new structure with what we're doing because it doesn't revolve around having to have a nickel safety. We can play a true Sam linebacker. You know, right now we're playing more of a safety type there, but we could play a true Sam. Our JV plays more of a true Sam linebacker. Our 3-by-1 stuff is a little bit more conducive to playing a Sam linebacker now. So, it helps our personnel. It definitely helps the simplicity of the things that we are trying to do now, to get more reps, to get better technically and fundamentally. I'm excited this year. I don't have without the middle safety stuff, I don't really have a position to coach. So we've got a D-line coach, we've got linebacker coaches, we've got a safeties coach, a corners coach. So it's going to let me kind of wander around a little bit more on defense than I have been able to in the past. So a little bit, to me, a little bit more exciting to where I can kind of be hands-on, more position groups during Indy and making sure guys are doing the things that we need to do and, cleaning up techniques and especially on the back end with coverage stuff, having a chance to get to spend more time with the corners than I normally do. And the two high safeties than I normally do because the last 2 years, I've been spending my time coaching the middle safety. So, I'm excited for that part of it. I think as a coordinator, you'd always want the ability to wander around and put your hands and your eyes on different things, especially during Indy. And then I don't have a position to coach during 7-on-7. So I can, depending on where we're struggling or what we're doing, I can keep my focus to the things that I need to keep focused on. And then when we're doing team or inside run periods, I can focus a little bit more on the front because I don't have to worry about the fits of the middle safety and fixing the middle safety all the time. So, that part's going to be exciting. It's always interesting to see when you start the year if what you set out to accomplish, if you can get those things done. For us, I think the big thing is going to be trying to keep some simplicity in the system to where we can execute a little bit better. I think in the past, and I've mentioned this on videos before, I think we've always tried to protect our kids with scheme. And I think we've been too dependent on the scheme at times and not as focused on getting more reps, when you have multiple fronts that you're playing and multiple coverages that you're playing. I think sometimes you rely on the scheme too much and you get away from the actual fundamentals of what kids need to be doing to win football games. So, always an exciting time of year. The summer is when you kind of dabble in some different things. You're coming off of clinics, maybe you visited colleges, some information that you picked up, and now you've got to have some kind of results, right? So, the fun part is now we start to see practice every day, and now we start to see results. You're going to see run fits that you didn't see in the summer, and you're going to see, as your depth chart shakes out, you're going to see if the guys that you are counting on can actually make the plays that you think they can make. And, special teams now picks up, which is always, an interesting part for me. I think it's a big part of the game that I know even in the videos we do, anytime I do a special teams video, it's always, way lower views than offensive or defensive videos because I think everybody gravitates towards offensive and defensive scheme. But I think special teams in high school is a place that you could really steal. You can steal some really big plays in games if you focus on special teams and you have some good players. Obviously, the kicking game part is tough because you need a kicker, right? There's nothing you can really scheme. It's tough to scheme around not having a kicker. If you don't have a kicker, then you got to pooch or sky, and kickoff coverage gets a little bit mundane sometimes because you can't actually kick it down the field. But, that's the tough part, similar to offense without a quarterback, or at least in offense, if you don't have a quarterback, you can kind of change your system to be conducive to the players that you have. When you have a kicking game and you don't have a kicker, I mean, obviously you can change your theories on, I agree with you, Gerard, very much so. I think obviously you can sky and pooch and squib and do some different things. So, I mean, there's still schematics involved in it. To me, it's a lot more fun when you can kick it deep and you can sky it and you have onsides and a lot of other things that are there. So, but that part now that you have special teams, I think finding special teams players, For us in Florida, we get to play kids 6 quarters between JV and varsity games. So trying to manipulate your roster to figure out which kids can help on special teams, while still giving them a chance to, grow and develop as JV players and trying to win JV games. I think that's, for me, that's one thing we got to do a better job of. We've always budgeted, our time. We coach the heck out of our JV kids, and all of our varsity guys coach JV, and I've always done it that way with all my staff. So by no means do we disregard our JV, but I think when you're choosing a roster, at least for us, with the 6-quarter rule came in effect, we always kind of, we always kind of lean towards kids helping us on special teams and helping us more on varsity, and then they can only play 2 or 3 quarters on JV, and it really affected our JV team. And I think if you're building culture and trying to get kids comfortable with competing and winning, I think you got to give them a chance to compete and win. And, there's been years where when I was a head coach, we really didn't do that because we, results wise, we put all our eggs in the varsity basket, and it's not to say that we didn't coach the JV, but we, from a talent perspective, kind of stole some of the guys that would have gave the JV a better chance to compete because we needed them to do things with us on varsity. So, finding special teams players now, doing special teams drills, coverage drills, which for me, I'm going to handle the defensive aspect of those. So I've got kickoff, I've got punt block, I've got field goal block, all the defensive, special teams. And then our offensive guys are going to handle the offensive, the return part of the game. So that's always interesting to me as well. I think that's, when the season kicks off, I think now that you have special teams, it makes, to me, it breaks up the monotony of the everyday offense, defensive grind. And now you can get your mind on some other things. And hopefully with having to do a little bit more on special teams than I have in the past, hopefully that'll keep me, a little bit more grounded with what we're trying to do with our defense. We had a little bit of a philosophical change, like I said, going from trying to carry so many schemes to kind of, getting into looks that we feel like we can rep more often. We're going to change how we practice a little bit and do a little bit more best on best, our offense against our defense, and get as many reps as possible with run fits and taking blocks on. And, like I said, I'm excited because I now get a chance to spend my time in some areas that I didn't get a chance to spend my time with. I always felt like as a coordinator, when I coached a position, I was either a bad coordinator or a bad position coach. It was kind of hard to do both. Not impossible by any means, and obviously it's part of the job, but I always felt like one of them kind of struggled. If I was trying to put my eyes on other things, I didn't coach my position as good as I should have. And if I coached my position the way I wanted to, then I didn't really fix some other things that needed to be fixed. So, being able to roam now a little bit, I think I can hopefully be a little bit more effective as a coordinator, fixing, some run fits and some block destruction and, some of our technique and our coverage stuff where we're a little bit sloppy and we tend to get sloppy at times with some things and got to get back to fundamentals. And, obviously as the season comes up now, tackling stuff and our tackling circuits, become a really big deal. We spend a lot of time in the summer actually doing tackling stuff, but it's more about leverage and, closing space and getting in position. Now, when you're actually tackling and you're doing tackling drills, now you can really start to hone in on the things you need to do to be a good tackling team. So I think that's one of the areas we're going to have to improve on if we want to win more games. 100%. I think we got to tackle better. And we got to get angles right. We got to be able to track, the near hip. We got to get our footwork right. We got to be able to get ourselves in position to strike and do all the things that you need to do to be a good tackling team. So, every time the season or a new season comes up, we actually, Kyler, to be honest with you, we do them probably more than anywhere I've ever been. We do tackling circuits. Even in season, we do tackling circuits probably twice a week. Usually about 15 minutes a day on different circuits. And we try to change up based on what we're struggling with. We try to change up, the drills we're doing, whether they're more tracking drills or whether they're more, near foot, near shoulder orientated, space orientated or contact orientated, trying to really hone in on where we're struggling and recreate drills that the one thing I don't like doing when you're doing tackling circuits is the same standard 3-4 circuits all the time. I think you would, I think you would, I think that sometimes gets a little monotonous. So last year we were actually an Atavis tackling team. We had an Atavis program that we were part of, and so all our drills came from them. And a lot of tracking drills. A lot of you know what we would call strike choice drills, to where there's a ball carrier, there's a defender, and the ball carrier is going to make a cut one way or the other, and we got to put a foot in the ground, and then we got to be near foot, near shoulder. And then we do a ton of 2-man vice stuff, some 3-man vice stuff where we're teaching guys where their help is and how to leverage the ball and keep it on their inside shoulder pad. There's basic drills that we do. Some just basic fundamental drills that, in the Atavis terminology, there's like, one arm sumo stuff where you start with one hand on a ball carrier. And then as soon as your hand drops, you got to step near foot, near shoulder, and get into position. So it's kind of the walk before you run type deal. And those are all the things you're doing early. And then, trying to recreate leverage drills and tracking drills and different things that, when you're struggling a little bit, what you're trying to get accomplished. So a lot of, usually every day, one of them will be some type of one-on-one drill or some type of one-on-one tracking drill and having to close space and strike somebody. One of the drills is usually going to be some type of partner 2-man vice. And we change that up with the angles where they're coming from and how we're trying to do that. Interesting question, Kyler. We, most of our circuits are generally, because our kids play both ways, our circuits are designed so that all of our players get reps. And we make all of our players go through the circuits. Certainly when you set up a tackling circuit, one of the things you always got to keep in mind, and what we'll do, is some of the drills that don't really fit D linemen or bigger players, we either change the space. Like when those guys get there, I tell the coaches to make the drill shorter, make the box smaller if we're working in space or whatever. And, because a lot of the things that the back end guys might be doing, the front end guys don't really need as much of that. Your D linemen are usually a lot of times what you would call more disadvantaged position tackles, or in positions where there's going to be either some type of, roll tackle or some type of side profile tackle where your backers and your safeties and your corners, they get more of the spatial tackles, to where, it's more tracking involved and gaining leverage and keeping leverage and sending the ball back to somebody else. So, a lot of times you'd probably be better. To me, I think what might be a better idea at times, and I think about this as a coordinator, is making our back end guys go through circuits, but making our D line guys incorporating, giving them more indie time and making sure the coach does 1 or 2 tackling drills that are conducive to them. So I've thought about this at times. If we have 2 spatial tackle circuits that are going on where we're tracking and closing space and vicing the football, and our back end guys are doing those 2, well, if they rotate every 5 minutes in those 2, then maybe the D line for 10 minutes has 2 different tackling drills, and they don't rotate through the other drills, and we just rotate the skills through that. So good question, though. And that's something that we find all the time when we find some drills that we like, and then we got to change them a little bit when the big guys get there, because they're not really, spatially, it's not good. And then anytime you need a ball carrier involved, it's hard to get a look when it's a D lineman against a D lineman, right? Those aren't the guys we're tackling, in games. So thank you, Kenneth. That's the tough part too, when you get big guys and they got to be rabbits and they don't really understand what you need from the rabbit to run with the football. So you would like it to be skill on skill, or at least D linemen have to tackle skill too, right? They're not tackling offensive linemen. So that's the tough part when a D lineman get involved. But I think from a practice standpoint, when you're planning things out, I think it's always easier to set your circuits up and rotate. And then you put what I try to do is if each coach might have 2 to 3 drills maybe that they're going to do all year. And then I just try to rotate through those drills. I try not to make, every coach, if we've got 6 or 8 tackling drills we're doing, we certainly, our coaches know them all, but I try not to make them do them all. I try to say, all right, look, let's get really good at what we're doing. You've got these 2 tackling drills, and all year are these 3 drills that you're doing. And each day that we put one out there, you got a chance now to really coach it up, right? It's tough to put coaches on the spot and say, hey, do this drill if they've never done it before. So I try to keep the drills and the circuits, kind of the guys that are coaching for me, I try to keep them in the same spots if I can, so that the drills can be taught effectively and we get the best, usage out of our staff. And again, with the players, it's tough because the big guys aren't always, you know, they're not always the best at doing some of the drills that the other guys are doing, and they don't really have to close space as much. And when they do close space, it ends up being a different angle tackle than it does, head up. That D linemen aren't in a lot of positions where they have to close space and end up with some type of, you know, leverage tackle or vice tackle. Or well, now we make our guys do it for the safety of it and near foot, near shoulder, so that we teach everybody. So we don't neglect teaching any of our players, but sometimes it makes perfect sense that the D linemen don't need to be doing all that, right? So I could certainly see a situation where, and it might be something we try this year. It might be something I talked to my head coach about, where if we've got, let's do 10 minutes of tackling and let the D line do 10 minutes of their own tackling drills while these back end guys rotate through the leverage drills or the tracking drills, or the angle drills that we need to do with the back end guys, and let the D line guys do more of the stuff that they need to do. So, certainly something that you could look at. And again, I think the key thing for every coach, coordinator, whatever it is, I think the key thing is keeping your practices, evolving, and, kind of keeping it, an open book every day, to where it's not. I know a lot of guys like routines. I know a lot of guys like, obviously for the organization of it. I'm not saying it's going to be helter skelter, but like your practices need to be conducive to what you're doing. And if you're struggling with things, and your practices need to be conducive to what you're struggling with, and, your drills and your periods need to be conducive to that. So I think your practices need to have an ebb and flow to them, to where they change throughout the year, right? It's not every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, this is what we do. I think there's a template for what you're going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but I think it's got to have the ability to adapt and adjust to what's going on and the situation at hand. And then obviously, as the season goes on, the contact gets a little bit less, because you're trying to get through the grind of guys being injured and guys, the physicality of the football season. So, some of those things then change when we're in tackling circuits. So, but I think, that's the neat part of it, is each coach has the ability to dial up their own plan and, adapt their own plan to their needs and what they need to get done. And, fortunately for me, my head coach gives me the leeway on defensive days sometimes to change the plan around a little bit, or to say that we need more work on this or more work on that. So, hopefully on both sides of the ball, we're going to kind of stay true to what we are and not get too carried away with game plans. I think sometimes in the past we've gotten a little bit carried away with game plans and installation of things that we think we need to compete. And, you spend Monday, Tuesday kind of going over everything that's new. And then by the time you get to Wednesday, you figure out what you like and what you don't. And, I'd rather get back to work on Monday and be like, all right, this is how we play defense. This is what we do. And let's work on all the things that we need to work on. And a couple adjustments we may need to make that week if we're seeing empty or bunches or motions or trades. And you're obviously always going to have to get, gear time into your practice to do those things. But I think in the past, our Mondays have been a little bit too much install oriented, changing things, wrinkling things. And, it was always from the mindset of competing and protecting our kids physically for what we felt like we needed to do. But at the same time, I think it kind of was a disservice to our kids at times, when we, it's hard to get good at something when you're constantly changing and saying, all right, this week we're going to play this and this week we're going to do that. And I think if you've got your toolbox and you've got your answers and you know what you like and what your kids do well, and then every week you work on those things. And, if there's going to be time to time, are you going to change a blitz path? Yeah, I can certainly see that. Are you going to, each week, are you going to run more zone pressures one week than you do another week? Is there another week where you're going to play more man than you do? I mean, obviously that's still going to happen in a game plan. Every week is different. Every opponent is different. So, that's still going to go on. There's no way, there's really no way around that in football. But, in my opinion, I think if we can kind of stick to our guns a little bit and it's up to the coordinators to do it. It's one of those deals where it's up to the coordinators to kind of say, hey, this is what we're doing, and not, as it's kind of like, don't get spooked and don't get freaked out if things aren't going as well as you want them early on, because that's when you tend to kind of stray from the script a little bit and start doing different things, other things. And then you find out that you're back to your old ways again of trying to scheme and X and O somebody else and not line up and play good football. So, that's what we're going to try and do this year. We spend a lot of time team building. We do a lot of different things in our meetings. At the start of meetings, we mix kids up and we make older kids sit down and talk to younger kids and ask each other questions. And then they got to come out and, give answers to the team about what they learned about a freshman and what a freshman learned about a senior. And, we try in the summer to split the groups up to where they're working with different people, when we do some of our conditioning stuff and, even some of our defensive stuff, we try to kind of break the groups up to where they have to work with different people. And every week we have a focus and each one of our coaches will give a different talk on, 1 week it'll be character, 1 week it'll be responsibility, one week it'll be loyalty or leadership or whatever it may be. And so our coach does a good job with all that stuff. And I think he kind of preaches to our guys what we're trying to get from them from a team perspective and what we're trying to which part do we do with our coaching staff, friends? Our coaching staff will get a topic each week that they talk about, and then our coaches are always asked to kind of mingle around the different conversations that players are having. And each week maybe coach will start meetings with a question, and he'll ask guys a question that might not even relate to our football team. It might be an NFL or a college question, or he might ask them, to talk with somebody else about a certain topic, just so he it's kind of like an icebreaker in a way, but at the same time, it's trying to get guys to get away from always being around the same guys and always hanging with the same guys and trying to get guys to understand that, you never know who you're going to need in a team setting on a game night, so you want those guys to kind of be comfortable around one another. So we're always working on stuff like that and trying to build those things in, to what we're doing to create a little bit better locker room. But, it's tough. It's the ultimate team sport. It takes a lot of guys to be successful. Yeah, I mean, I think with the coaching staff, you're always trying to find ways to bond as a staff to grow the chemistry of the coaching staff. It's a little bit tougher to me with the coaching staff because, year to year, it's hard to keep the same guys together. The longer you could keep a staff together, I think the better chance you have of learning personalities and, figuring out things that guys enjoy doing and things that you can do in the off season. We certainly try to go to clinics in the off season. We had a staff meeting where we went and visited Coastal Carolina, and we went to Myrtle Beach, and we had a staff meeting, the first day before we even got to the college. So, we spent about 6 to 8 hours meeting on things and talking about, what our expectations are and what we need from the staff and what we're trying to do better as a coaching staff. So, and when we had our first meeting last week, our coach always lays out a pretty good idea of what he expects of, I think that's the job of the head coach is to kind of lay down the expectations of what he wants coaches to be. And, more than just an X's and O's guy, what he expects them to be on the field, off the field, the relationship that he expects coaches to kind of build with players and, get coaches to understand that the players aren't really going to care until they know that you care and everything's not about, blocking, tackling and formations and blitzes and coverages. There's more to it than that. So I think we do a fairly good job with that. I think we put an emphasis on it. I think that's something that we try to be really good at. And we're always preaching to our guys that we're a little bit different, than other teams. Obviously I coach at a private Catholic school now, which is different than, coaching at a public school. So, linebacker minus, will the lead zone blocker be vert and wide? Sorry, I'm trying to read that. If linebacker minus, will the lead zone blocker be? It probably depends on what your rules are with either a count system or how you're blocking your wide zone stuff. There's some guys block wide zone different ways. And if it's a count system and the linebacker's minus, then who is he in the count system? And then, whoever's responsible for him in the count system would be responsible for that, for that linebacker. Or, some guys, if they're a tempo team, they might be more on tracks to where they're running tracks to where, because they're playing faster and maybe they can't get fronts or backers identified. They just kind of run the play on track, so to speak, so that they can get where they need to go, and then they'll block it as they see it when it happens. But kind of hard to generically answer that question if I don't really know how teams block their wide zone stuff, or or if you're trying to who the lead blocker is in your wide zone, if you're a fullback orientated team, if you're a tight end orientated team, who your count system is and who's trying to work to that minus linebacker. But it would all be about how you ID your fronts and how you set your system up to figure out how you're going to get those guys kind of accounted for. You might have to do it formationally. You might have to do it with motions to get people accounted for. But, at the end of the day, everybody's got different rules for how they block stuff and how they're gearing up their rules for how they do exactly what it is that they do. So, even wide zone teams in general, I don't think they block it all the same. Even the NFL guys don't block it all the same, right? You got like the Shanahan system where they have multiple, they would have, multiple ways of handling the box and who the center IDs and who the fullback would go to. They've got, 15 different calls to handle all those, situations that we probably couldn't get to. But I would never, for me, Big Easy, I would never line my front up to plays. I would line my front up to formations. So, if you're an over team and you're setting a 3 technique, you decide where you want to set them. So do you want to set them to the 3-man surface? Do you want to set them to the field? Do you want to set them to the back? If you've got a tendency of where you think you're getting counter and you want the 3 technique front side, then obviously you can do that. But for me, when I start off, I don't think about setting fronts, based on plays. I think about setting fronts by formation first. And if I'm an over front team, where do I want the 3 technique by formation or to the field or, game plan wise, I think you can get into that. But for me, philosophically, I don't think about it play wise because I think that team probably runs more plays than just counter. And I really don't know when they're going to run counter. So for me to say that I would line the 3 technique up, to say that I'm going to get counter and which way I'm going to get it when the offense can run it both ways. Now if it's one of those deals where counter always goes away from the tight end or the fullback and you want the 3 technique front side of the counter play, so you're going to line them up game plan that week away from the tight end. Most over front teams I think would set the 3 technique probably to the 3-man surface if it was 11 personnel stuff with a tight end. If it was 10 personnel stuff, you could set the 3 technique to the back or away from the back, depending on how you want to play zone stuff or where you want the zone to go. But I think offenses in general are too multiple to really just say that you can line up and, put people down somewhere to say that you're trying to stop counter or you're trying to stop, certain plays, because I would think they probably carry more runs than just counter. If you're an under front team, then the 3 is on the reduction side. So the strength is actually the A shade and the 5 technique and probably where the Sam or the 9 technique goes. So, it's probably different for everybody with where they are going to put the 3 technique. We're a tight front team. We don't even play with a 3 technique. So, we play with a nose and 2-4 eyes. So for us, it's, and one of the things I like about tight front stuff is setting the front is not as big of a priority for us. Figuring out all the rules that we need or what we need to do to set the front, because our front is pretty balanced when you have a nose and 2-4 eyes. So for us, it's more about how we handle C gaps and how we're going to protect C gaps. And, if we're bringing a 4th rusher, where's he coming from game plan wise? So, it's a little bit, that world is a little bit different than the typical over front world or the typical under front world where you're going to set the front, either by formation or you're going to set the front to the field or you're going to set the front to the back. But, again, I think there's so many variables to how you could set the front. I just personally would never set the front for a play, unless the team only ran one scheme. If counter was their only run and I was trying to set the 3 technique somewhere because of what I felt like gave us a better chance, whether it's the back block by the center or, whatever front side double team combination, whatever it may be, then I think that's obviously, something that you could think about. But I would think most teams that run counter or gap scheme teams, they probably run power also. So, if tendency says you want to set the 3 technique to the tight end or away from the tight end, then I think you can certainly do that. And to me, that's the beauty in coaching football is there is no there is no set way to do things, right? You could set the front however you want. You could be a field front team. You could be a boundary front team. You could set you could set it to a back. You could set it to a tight end. You could kind of set that front and, however you want to do it. That the one thing I know for me in the past when we were an over front team, having 6 different ways to set the three technique gets to be a little bit of an issue for at least high school players, in my opinion. We got so caught up with where we were setting a 3 technique that sometimes we didn't get lined up and we were late getting lined up. So I think about the easiest rules possible to get the 3. And then I think post snap movement is a way to handle some of those things. So, if you're setting a 3 somewhere and you think that you're getting different schemes, and you can move the 3 post snap, and, you could blood the front and go from under to over post snap by moving the 3 in the A shade. So all those things that you can do to kind of protect the front. And it's also depending on what you're playing against, it's coverage structure, right? With where guys are and where the big bubble is, where the A shade and the 5 are, and how you're going to get an extra guy into the big bubble, and, how you're going to defend the 3 technique side A gap, depending on what runs you're seeing. So, again, the beauty of the game is you want to be as simplistic as possible, but there's so many variables that go into every front coverage structure that, it's tough to you can say you're going to be simplistic, but there's a lot of things going on when the ball gets snapped. So, but you can control that as a coach, right? I think there's no right or wrong answer with where you set the 3 technique. You could set them and then you can move them post snap. So a lot of answers, a lot of variables, but right now we don't set the 3 technique, because we're a tight front team. So we do play some 4 down stuff. And last year when we played 4 down, we set the 3 technique to versus 11 personnel teams. We would set the 3 technique to the tight end or the 3-man surface, wherever that body was. So no tight end, we'd set them either field or to the back, but we spend the majority of our time playing tight front stuff. So the beauty of that is you don't really have to set the front. So, for us now in our 3-4, we kind of resemble more of a reduction team. So for us, it's more about where the 4th rusher is and where he's coming from. We have the ability to bring either one, so we can bring the weak side back or the strong side nickels. So obviously we have to carry both of those things. If you're a 3-4 team, you can't continue to bring the same guy all the time and drop the same guys all the time. So we have the ability in our package to do that. So right now for us, it's more about where the passing strength is, and the Sam's going to set himself there, and then our weak side backer is going to go away from that. And then for us, our base rules right now, our weak side backer has rules with whether he's in coverage or part of the rush. So he knows when he's going to be in coverage. He knows when he's going to be part of the rush. If he's going to be part of the rush, he makes a call to the 4-eye to his side to let the 4-eye know that he's coming with him. So you don't have to worry about contain on pass. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So, all part of how you build your system, what you're trying to do. For us living in a tight front world, those are some of the things that we have to look at. And, but I think it for us, it saves some time and, an install of our only concern right now is where the Sam sets the passing strength to, and then everything else kind of falls in place off of that. So we don't have to worry about setting the front. We don't have to worry about what we're doing with the front. So it makes it a little bit easier from that standpoint. So I really don't have that concern right now of where the 3 technique is or where the 3 technique isn't. So, one of the things I like, again, about tight front, I think we're balanced, especially now with the 3-4 stuff. I feel like any formation that comes out, we've got a backer to both sides. We've got safeties to both sides. We've got a Mike and a Will to each side. So I feel like no matter what the offense comes out in, we can kind of counter that with, our ability to line up the formations in place and things. And that's one of the reasons we went away from, our 3-high stuff into more 3-4 stuff. Again, it's the same box for us. It's tight front mechanics. Our Mike and our Will fit things pretty much the same. Our coverage structure stayed the same. So, it's not as big of a change as people would think it is. And again, I think people read too much into the 3-high stuff. We, at least the last 2 years, our version of it was pretty generic and pretty simple. It was all split field philosophies, and the middle safety basically just assumed the roles of an old school Mike linebacker. So now this year for us, like our Mike and our Will have to understand where they fit in coverages because we don't have a middle safety anymore. Last year, our Mike in our base package was actually the 4th rusher or the spy pull-up player on the quarterback because the middle safety assumed his role. So our quarters toolbox stayed the same when we played 3-high. We never really changed from when I was a 4-2-5 team. We never changed our rules. We just basically, and I think the easiest way to look at three high stuff is the middle safety is really for us more of a hybrid linebacker than he was a safety. And then his ability to play the middle of the field and close the middle of the field, and the ability to rotate differently with three high safeties obviously makes things a little bit tougher on the offense. But I think coverage wise, I think sometimes people look at the structure, at least the stuff I read online or on Twitter or on social media. It's like, guys are always putting film clips of Iowa State and what they're doing that's different. And I really don't think it's that much different than your typical 4-2-5 team or 3-4 defense. It just looks different because of the third high safety. But I think, behind closed doors, everything is kind of the same, coverage wise. It's just the middle safety is now the guy playing three vertical instead of, old school Mike linebackers playing three vertical. And, so it's interesting now that I get a chance to look at that. We're not, again, we have the ability if we wanted to. I'm not saying we're never going to, but right now it's not going to be part of our base package. I may actually make it part of our 3-down stuff this year. That might be my change up to where our 3-down stuff becomes more of our 3-high-ish version of how we do things. But, from a personnel standpoint, trading out the middle safety for a weak outside linebacker, it fits our team. It fits our kids. And I think it's going to put us in a better position. And we'll see, Monday when we kick off, we'll see, we'll see when we have to fit runs and formations and how we have to play things. We'll see if it's going to reap its benefits to where hopefully it's as simplistic as we feel it is. Hopefully it stays that way and we keep it that way. And hopefully our kids can see, how easily we can line up the different things and make calls and get set. The one thing for us that was different was motion adjustments become a little bit of an issue now because when we were 3-high, we had very simplistic motion adjustments, and now we lose the ability to do what we did in our 3-high stuff. So we got to address motion a little bit more. Now we're still going to try and keep it simple. I think one of the things with motion adjustments that people get caught up in is, you've got, if you're a middle of the field open team, split field coverage, when you're playing your base defense, obviously you're going to have to have a way to handle motions, but as soon as you pressure or as soon as you get to other coverages, you probably respond to motions differently than you do in base. So I don't think you need a multitude of ways to handle motions in your base defense. It's one of those things where we have to have a base way. So our kids have to have an alert in base defense, how we're going to handle motions. But I try to keep that as simplistic as possible because, again, once we start to blitz and play some man and do some different things, the motion adjustments aren't the same. So it's not like the offense can lock in and say, all right, when we motion, we can get them to do this or that. Yeah, you can get us to do that in base, but we're not in base every down. So you're not going to get the same motion adjustment all the time. So you guys treat kickoff coverage identical this spring or more like a season. You talking about our kickoff classic? So our kickoff classic will be a little bit more game-like than the spring, I would think. Our kickoff classic probably has more live special teams than the spring did. Our kickoff classic, probably, for us, probably more game plan conducive than the spring would be. Trying to get certain things accomplished. Again, playing a different defense now, the kickoff classic, we're going to treat a little bit different than the spring game because now we've got to see, what we like and what we don't like in a game. It'll be the first chance we get to see, what we're doing with the front and what we're doing with the coverage. It'll be our, pressures. It'll be our first chance to see that. So I think it changes year to year. As a head coach in my 22 years of being a head coach, I think the players we had year to year, it changed a little bit with how much we were trying to do. I think it changes when your offense and defense changes. To me, I think kickoff classic every year is a little bit different. I know we're going to treat this one probably a little bit more like a regular season game, but we still only play starters a half. But I think, there's some things on special teams we need to get sorted out. And again, some things on defense that we need to get sorted out. So, I would think for us, our kickoff classic would be treated more like a season game than it would a spring game. New facility, walls are up. A lot of the structure is up now. So I would think The new facility should be done hopefully by January. I know this season's going to be a little bit tough with the construction going on. It's going to change our ticket gate a little bit and our entrance to the stadium and things like that. So, it's going to be, it's going to be one of those deals where, there's going to be some things that you got to work around, but I'm sure the alumni want to come see it. I can't wait to see it and get in it. It's going to have some really neat wrinkles to it. We were talking about it today. Like, I think some of our timing mechanics that we use, some of the laser stuff that we use is going to be built into there's going to be like 4 lanes on a 30-yard area on the second floor of the facility where guys can do some drills and run, and the strength coach can test guys. And I think the lasers are going to be built in to where, big thing we were talking about is right now the kids always know when they're being timed and when they're not being timed because you got to put lasers out and, you got to have a stopwatch the old way. I always did things with a stopwatch, but I think you can get better effort out of your guys now in a new facility when you're just doing drills because they don't know if they're being timed or not. One of the other neat things our strength guy had going on this summer is he's got GPS devices now that track our players' speed and monitor their effort and how fast they're running, and then he's able to track the rest that we need, the recovery that we need. So when I go by his office right now, it looks like NASA. He's got things plugged in everywhere, and now we've got inside our weight room, all the tools to measure bar speed and bar path, and the load that we need to get and how hard kids are working. So it's pretty neat. It's interesting to me as somebody who's kind of more of an old school strength guy. I think all that stuff is really neat. You track it on a computer, and we had a first 7-on-7. We had, that coach couldn't be there and he had the GPS devices on the kids. And, the next morning when I get there, he asked me if one of our kids broke up, if we had a long pass play or something like that, because he could see the top end speed and how long the kid, the distance and all that stuff. So that was kind of interesting. He knew that, we had a 70-yard completion and he wasn't even at the 7-on-7 because he could tell tracking the movement of the player in the GPS. So, he's got a way he tracks all that. And then week to week, he's able to post it, social media, our top end speed guy, and he's able to chart all of our records. And, this week we've been testing, some of our 10-yard acceleration stuff. Obviously some of our, pro agility stuff and our 5-10-5 shuttle stuff. And then, some other neat, runs that he does that he tests guys on. But the thing about having lasers is you got to set them up. And when they're set up, the kids know they're being tested. So in the new facility, I think it's going to be awesome because I think he can do some drills with kids and then he can monitor effort because he can time them. And I don't think the kids always know when they're going to be timed. But I've only seen the plans for that. Obviously I didn't sit in on any of those plans, but the Terradome, how are you, bud? I'm waiting for the next phase. The next phase is going to be the gym and the auxiliary gym. And if I'm there long enough to see it, I think we're going to have 2 health classrooms in there, which, last year I kind of roamed from classroom to classroom, and then we're going to have an auxiliary gym. So I think, it's going to make life in the gym as a gym coach a little bit easier. There's going to be more space for people to play, volleyball and basketball can be separated. And I think we're going to have a little space there to do some fitness stuff. I would always say sustaining strength. I changed the tail end of my head coaching career and we started lifting on game days. So we lifted 5 days a week. My last couple of years as a head coach, I wasn't real happy with how our kids were treating game days and I wanted a little bit tougher mentality and a little bit more physical mentality. So obviously we geared the lifts differently on game day, and we toned some things down. But I never, as a head coach, when I was involved in the weight room, I never went heavier than, for me in season, I never went heavier than 85%. There were a bunch of seasons where we never caught cleans. All of our triple joint extension stuff was pulls and shrugs and deadlifts and boxes and some other things where trying to take some stress off the wrist joint in season. We don't do any, we may do some push press stuff, but we don't do any jerk exercises. At least I don't do any jerk exercises in season. Try to take pressure off the shoulder joint. I think you can push press and use your legs a little bit more, but none of the true overhead jerk mechanics in season for me. At least that's kind of part of a philosophy. So I think it changes year to year, team to team. Years where I felt like we needed to be more physical and get a little bit tougher. We tried to start that in the weight room, and we tried to change that mentality in the weight room. So, anytime you do stuff like that, though, your kids, it's a change, it's different. So, that first game that you win when you lift on a game day and you ask the kids how they feel, and everybody feels, because they won, they feel good. And it's like, all right, well, you lifted today, guys. I don't think you're any more or less sore than you were, after a game. When you lose a little bit, now the kids are thinking that it's part of the routine. And, they always bitch about being tired and being sore. So, you certainly have to monitor what things you're doing. You're not going crazy heavy on a game day, but we used to watch film on game days. We used to do like game plan stuff on game days, but I felt like the kids never really took it as serious as I wanted them to. And I just got to a point where I felt like we needed to be tougher. So for me as a head coach, we would live 5 days a week. And Mondays and Fridays, obviously you got your coming off the weekend and coming off of games, and guys are banged up. So that lift needs to be a little bit different. And then game days, that lift needs to be a little bit different. But, I think the big thing is if you work really hard in the off season to gain something, you really don't want to take, 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. I think you want to kind of sustain as much as you can. I don't think the wrist, elbow, shoulder joints, knee joints, hip joints, with all the contact going on, I don't think they can take the same load as you do in the off season. But I would think your better programs, at least the better programs I've seen, have a way to lift pretty extensively in season, and train hard in season. Obviously you can track and now with all these computerized programs and GPS stuff, we can track the intensity of the workload. Used to constantly do it by hand, changing, percentages and sets and reps and things like that to change the intensity. But now you can monitor it with the computer programs a little bit better. So I personally, myself, though, I'm an advocate for 5 days a week and creating a mindset in the weight room and telling your team you want to be physical and you want to be tough and you want to be all those things. Well, if you want to be mentally tough, then learn how to work out on game days, learn how to work out during the season, right? It's part of the grind. It's part of being a football player. So, that's one of those things that I think as a coach, you can kind of build into your program and create a mindset of, hey, we're going to be in better shape than people. We're going to be tougher than people. And, but the thing you got to tell your kids all the time is everybody else is doing it too, right? Just because you're doing it doesn't mean, I always used to get a kick out of people saying they outwork everybody. Well, you're not in our facility. How do you know who you outwork? That's a great motto. It's a great mantra. And I think you need to believe in that, but I don't think there's anything factual saying that you outwork people, because you're not at somebody else's facility. Thanks, Tommy. I appreciate it. But, so it's, again, that's probably personality. That's probably mindset. I changed over the years as I got older and went to some different schools and watched how people did things and asked questions, to some of the better programs around, and got myself to a point where we lifted on game days. So, but right now I'm not in, I'm in the weight room at times. I coached a weightlifting team, but I'm not really the strength coach at our school. So, our guy has the stuff that he does, and he does a really good job with it. And he's all over the technology part of it and does a really good job year round, planning things out and kind of getting phases for the kids and getting them ready when they really need to be ready. And, I think we're on top of it, and that new facility is going to help us even more. So, obviously, everybody's excited about that. I think it's going to look really good in the stadium too. Next to, when you come into the facility, you've got the river behind it, the Jag Stadium behind it. Now you're going to have this brand new, athletic facility. It'd be nice if obviously the field house is still the same, the stadium and the stands are still the same, but I think that's phase 3. Maybe they're going to do something if I'm there long enough to see that, or if I'm around long enough to see it. I hope so. So, but we're in that time of year again. It's football season, and it feels good. Obviously, where we are in Florida, it's going to be a grind the first 2-3 weeks to a month. It's going to be 90 something every day. You got a wet ball when you can go, when you can't go. And that's another thing as coaches, you got to figure out, you got to have ways to improvise and adjust your practice plans, because there's going to be days where you got to go in the gym. There's going to be days where you can't go in pads, and you can't freak out about stuff like that and get bent out of shape. I know some coaches have their routine and their schedule, and if anything gets off schedule, they just completely freak out. But, to me, in this day and age, you've got to be able to adjust. You've got to be able to get things done, whatever you can get done. On a day you felt like you really wanted to be physical and you couldn't go in pads, well, shit, you still got to get some work done, and may not be the work you wanted. But I think some guys, to me, get a little bit bent out of shape with their exact practice plan and what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it. I mean, to me, it's all about, hey, if we got to adjust, let's adjust and get some work done. How can we get work done, whether it's in a gym? How can we get work done in a classroom? If we got to go on a field with no pads, what can we do that's going to help us without pads on? Like, instead of, I kind of, as I get older now, I take the mentality, instead of bitching about what we can't do, let's take advantage of all the things we can do, right? I mean, instead of bitching about what you don't have, let's try and maximize what we do have. Let's take advantage of what we do have. So, and again, that's mindset, it's outlook, and I try to, especially now as an assistant coach, I try to be as positive as I can. I'm normally in general kind of a, I'm a real tough critic on myself. So I get negative sometimes when we're not playing good on our side of the ball. But trying to get to a point where, as an assistant coach, trying to be a little bit more positive with things, and, be somebody who helps and not hurts, and be somebody who's there to kind of spice things up a little bit and give opinions on things. Now I'm at the program I'm at for 3 years now. So I think, I can give my opinion on things that we do, what I like and what I don't like. So, and that's also the coaching staff part too, right? The longer you stay together, the longer guys can kind of start to give opinions on things they like or don't like. They've got a vested interest now. They've been there for a couple of years. And even on your side of the ball, guys can kind of give their opinion on game plans and coverages and pressures and things like that, because they've got more time vested in the program, and so, but those are all things that again, you can't control. Where we are in Florida, you're going to get thunderstorms, you're going to get lightning, you're going to get chased off the field. The wet bulb's going to say 120. It is what it is. The rules are what they are. And to me, get done what you can get done, however you can get it done in the time period. And the next day, if you got to adjust your practice plan to do some things that you couldn't get done that day, then you just make an adjustment. So never, to me, the advice I would have for head coaches is never have a plan that has to be exactly the way it is on paper, because if it doesn't work out, then you're just going to be bent out of shape. So be able to adjust, be able to change, be able to make some adaptations to the schedule. And then when these things happen, you can kind of roll with the punches a little bit better. And you'll make yourself a better coach in the long run than you will if you're just trying to say, no, we practice 2 hours and we do these drills and this has to get done. And we've got to be physical. We got to be in pads. If it can't happen, it can't happen. You can still work and get better. So, that would be my advice to everybody. But I appreciate you guys being here. I got to get up for workouts in the morning. Been on for about an hour. Definitely going to go on again next week. First week of the season with practices going on, and talk a little bit about what I like and what I don't like. Definitely going to have some more YouTube and Patreon videos coming up now that I have film. I'll get back to doing Patreon videos, taking you through drive by drive, what we were playing the first couple drives, what we did right, what we did wrong, now that we'll have film. So really excited to have some film now, because, as you guys know, I'm not about posting college clips, NFL clips, and what everybody's running. And here's a look at the penny front, and here's a look at, somebody running Iowa State's 3 high stuff. And here's a look at, Alabama's Rip Liz match. I think there's a lot of guys that do it. I think they do a really good job with it, but mine is more about the survival of the high school coach and what things are we doing and what things can we do better. And, from trying to give you a perspective of somebody that's on the front line, just like you are, doing all the things that we need to do, because I think I understand, being a high school coach for 24 years now and a head coach for 22 years, I think I understand everybody's dilemma. I think I can relate to everybody's dilemma, calling an offense, calling a defense, doing special teams. I think I have enough versatility in all those things to relate to people. So I'm always interested or excited to get our hands on our own film, because I never really pull my film from college stuff. And although there is a guy with the Jags I met that spent some time at Alabama and some other places, and he's a young guy that loves one of the assistant coaches to one of their to the linebacker coach, and really cool guy that I'm going to try and keep in touch with. And maybe in the off season, I might try and do some stuff with him. But, our niche is what it is. Our channel is what it is. And it's going to stay it's going to stay true to what that is, and that's high school football and us, talking about, what we do. So I need film. I need our film. I need our practice film. I need our game film. Hopefully some of it's good, but even when it's bad, it's always a way to go out there and tell people what's bad and what doesn't work and what you're having a hard time with. So excited to get the season kicked off. I'm glad you guys could be here tonight. Check us out next week. I'll have a couple, hopefully a couple new videos rolling out soon. So check those out, and we'll go from there. So thanks for being here. Thanks for everything you guys do for PlayFast. Remember, check us out on Twitter. Hit up some of our partners. If you have control of your program or you have input in your program, GameStrat for, sideline replay is who we use. Dome hats, my new PlayFast Dome hat, the P2 performance cap, actually the style that Billy Horschel was wearing in the British Open. So Dome hats, Baker Sporting Goods, who made, this is my old clinic PlayFast shirt. So Baker Sporting Goods, Brand Tech, who made me some custom PlayFast sneakers and some custom PlayFast windbreakers and stuff, and Fly Route drones. If you're in the market for drones and modern football technology, if you're in the market for in-game analytics and ways to track that so you can help yourself as a play caller, and Difference USA, the ultimate striking machine. So all the companies that are partners to us, I appreciate them. So if you get a chance to check them out and give them business, check them out and give them some business. All right. So appreciate you being here. Thanks for being here on a Wednesday night. Remember, you won't play well until you play fast. See all of you next time. And this time of year, roll tide.